If you've ever stood in the pet food aisle staring at ingredient lists that look like they were written in a foreign language, you're not alone. And more importantly, some of those ingredients have absolutely no business being in your dog's bowl. I'm Jasmine Caldwell, and I've spent nearly a decade as a professional dog groomer, working with dogs of every size and breed. What I've learned is this: what goes into your dog shows up on the outside, in their coat, their skin, their energy, even their behavior. Today, I'm breaking down exactly which ingredients to avoid and why they matter. You're listening to the Pet Parent Podcast. Quick heads up before we dive in. All the research and information you'll hear today has been written and verified by real experts in the pet care space, but the voice you're hearing is AI generated. So that's the setup. If you've been listening to these episodes regularly, thanks for making this part of your routine. And if you just found us, welcome. Glad you're here. We release new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, covering all things pet care, from food and health to training and gear. Today, we're breaking down the dog food ingredients you really need to avoid. So, let's get into it. My own 4 rescues have taught me that problematic dog food ingredients aren't just an academic concern. They're the difference between a senior shepherd with a glossy coat and manageable inflammation and one who's itchy, lethargic, and miserable. This is for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by a dog food label. I'll walk you through the red flags, the filler jargon, and the ingredients that shouldn't be anywhere near your dog's food, whether you're feeding a puppy, an adult, or a senior dog. Now let's talk about problematic protein sources and byproducts. Protein is non-negotiable for dogs, but the source matters more than most pet parents realize. I've seen dogs come into the shop with dull, brittle coats and chronic skin issues that cleared up within weeks of switching away from low-quality protein sources. First up, meat byproducts that don't specify the animal. When a label just says meat byproducts or poultry byproducts without naming the actual animal, you're looking at a grab bag of slaughterhouse leftovers: beaks, feet, feathers, intestines. AAFCO defines byproducts pretty broadly, and while some organ meats are actually nutritious, unspecified byproducts are a quality gamble you don't want to take. The same issue applies to meat and bone meal when it's generic. If it doesn't specify chicken meal or lamb meal, you have no idea what animals went into that rendering process, and the protein quality is usually rock bottom. Then there's the issue of what's called 4D meats. That's diseased, dying, disabled, or dead livestock. This isn't always disclosed directly on the label, but it's the risk you run with vague protein sources from manufacturers who aren't transparent about their sourcing practices. Look for brands that specify USDA-inspected meats or human-grade ingredients. Another thing to watch for is excessive plant proteins used as the primary protein source. Ingredients like corn gluten meal, soy protein isolate, or pea protein listed in the top 5 ingredients mean the manufacturer is using cheap plant proteins to boost the overall protein percentage while skimping on actual animal protein. Dogs are facultative carnivores who thrive on meat, not corn. And finally, rendered fat from unknown sources. If you see animal fat without the animal being specified, that's a quality red flag. Fat should come from named sources like chicken fat or salmon oil, and it should be preserved with natural antioxidants like mixed tocopherols, not chemical preservatives. When I switched my terrier mix off a food with generic meat meal as the second ingredient to one with named chicken and turkey, the change in her coat texture was noticeable within 3 weeks. That's not placebo. That's what quality protein does. Moving on to chemical preservatives and artificial additives. This is where I get most fired up because these ingredients serve the manufacturer's shelf life needs, not your dog's health. My senior shepherd had chronic ear infections and low-grade inflammation until I eliminated foods with these preservatives. BHA, that's butylated hydroxyanisole, and BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, are synthetic antioxidants that are actually banned in human food in some countries, but still legal in U.S. pet food. The National Institutes of Health has linked them to potential carcinogenic effects in animal studies. Then there's ifoxaquin. This was originally developed as a rubber stabilizer and pesticide, and it's used in some fish meals and pet foods as a preservative. It's been restricted or banned in several countries and has been associated with organ damage in high doses. Propylene glycol is used to maintain moisture in semi-moist foods. It's the same chemical that's in automotive antifreeze. Food grade, sure, but still problematic. It can cause oxidative damage to red blood cells, especially in cats, but also concerning for dogs. Artificial colors like blue 2, red 40, yellow 5, and 6, dogs don't care what color their food is. These petroleum-derived dyes exist purely for human appeal and have been linked to hyperactivity and allergic reactions in sensitive dogs. And artificial flavors when they're unspecified on the label. If a food needs chemical flavoring to be palatable, that tells you everything you need to know about the quality of the base ingredients. Good food smells like real meat to a dog's nose. I've seen too many dogs with mysterious skin flare-ups and GI issues that resolved when their owners switched to foods preserved with natural vitamin E, that's mixed tocopherols, or rosemary extract instead of chemical preservatives. Whether you're feeding dry food or wet food, check the preservatives in both. Wet food in cans typically needs less, but pouches and trays often still use them. Now, let's get into controversial fillers and low-quality carbohydrates. Carbs aren't inherently bad for dogs. They can provide energy and fiber, but cheap fillers used to bulk up food without adding nutrition are a different story. I learned this the hard way with my rescue beagle mix who was chronically gassy and had loose stools until we eliminated these ingredients. Corn and wheat gluten are protein-boosting fillers that are highly processed and have minimal bioavailability for dogs. They're often used to artificially inflate protein percentages on the guaranteed analysis without providing quality nutrition. White rice flour and brewer's rice are the leftover fragments after milling rice for human consumption. They're essentially empty calories with the fiber and nutrients stripped away, causing blood sugar spikes. Cellulose. Yes, that's powdered wood pulp. Some manufacturers actually use this as a fiber source, but it's nutritionally worthless filler that just adds bulk. Peanut hulls are another fiber source that's basically sawdust from peanut processing. If the manufacturer is padding the fiber content this way, they're cutting corners everywhere. Here's something important about grain-free formulas. Excessive peas, potatoes, or legumes in grain-free foods have caught the FDA's attention. They investigated a link between grain-free diets heavy in peas, lentils, and potatoes and dilated cardiomyopathy, that's DCM, in dogs. While the research is still ongoing, foods where these are the top 3 ingredients raise concern. And then there's corn syrup or added sugars. Dogs don't need sweeteners, and these contribute to obesity, dental disease, and energy crashes. I've seen dogs come in wired and anxious from foods with added sugars, especially in the training treat category. When I'm reading labels at the shop while chatting with clients, I tell them to look at the first 10 ingredients. That's where the bulk of the food comes from. If half of those are cheap fillers, it doesn't matter what fancy marketing is on the front of the bag. Let's talk about problematic additives and allergens. This covers ingredients that aren't universally problematic, but cause issues for many dogs, especially those with sensitivities. My high-strung rescue pit mix taught me this lesson. She had chronic itching and hot spots that cleared up when we removed these from her diet. Soy, whether it's soy flour, soybean meal, or soy protein, is a common allergen in dogs and a cheap protein source that's poorly digestible. It's also a phytoestrogen that can disrupt hormone balance in some dogs. Dairy products like milk, cheese, and whey. Most adult dogs are lactose intolerant to some degree, and dairy can cause GI upset, gas, and loose stools. Exceptions would be small amounts of low-lactose options, like plain yogurt, but these shouldn't be primary ingredients. Wheat and wheat middlings. Besides being a filler, wheat is one of the most common food allergens in dogs. Middlings are the sweepings from the milling floor, essentially dust and debris.
Carrageenan is a thickening agent derived from seaweed, used in many canned and wet foods. Research suggests it may cause inflammatory gut responses and has been linked to digestive issues. Menadione sodium bisulfate, that's synthetic vitamin K3, has been banned in several countries due to potential toxicity. Natural vitamin K is readily available from quality ingredients, so there's no reason to use the synthetic version. And excessive salt. While dogs need some sodium, foods that list salt high in the ingredient list or have more than 0.5% sodium on a dry matter basis can contribute to hypertension and kidney stress, especially in senior dogs.
I always tell clients that if their dog is scratching constantly, getting ear infections, or having digestive issues, checking the ingredient list for these common allergens is step one before you spend hundreds at the vet for allergy testing. Now, here's something really important: misleading and vague ingredient terminology. This is about the language tricks manufacturers use to make low-quality ingredients sound premium. After reading thousands of labels over the years, I can spot these a mile away. Natural flavors without any specification. This catch-all term can mean anything from organ meat extracts to chemical processing byproducts. Without transparency, you're flying blind. Animal digest is material that's been chemically or enzymatically broken down, basically pre-digested animal tissue used as a flavor enhancer. The animal source is often unspecified. Here's a tricky one: chicken meal versus chicken. This isn't necessarily bad, but you need to understand that chicken is 80% water, while chicken meal is rendered down. A food with chicken listed first and chicken meal fifth might actually have less chicken protein than one with chicken meal first. That's what ingredient splitting does. It obscures the real picture. Speaking of ingredient splitting, that's when manufacturers break up one ingredient into multiple forms to push it down the list. For example, listing ground corn, corn gluten meal, and corn bran separately. When combined, they'd be the top ingredient. Then there are qualifiers like with or flavor. A food called dog food with beef only needs to contain 3% beef, and beef flavor dog food can have 0% actual beef, just flavoring. Contrast this with beef dog food, which requires 95% beef. Mealtime or dinner descriptors mean the named ingredient only needs to make up 25% of the product. Chicken dinner has much less chicken than chicken dog food. Understanding these label tricks is essential when you're learning to choose the right dog food for your dog's needs. I've seen pet parents pay premium prices for foods that use fancy marketing language to disguise mediocre ingredient quality. Before you buy your next bag of dog food, run through this quick checklist. I keep this mental list whenever I'm recommending food to clients or shopping for my own pack. Red flag ingredients to avoid: generic meat byproducts or animal fat with no species named. Chemical preservatives like BHA, BHT, ethoxyquin, and propylene glycol. Artificial colors like blue 2, red 40, yellow 5, and 6. Protein fillers like corn gluten meal, wheat gluten, and excessive plant proteins. Empty fillers like cellulose, peanut hulls, and brewer's rice. Synthetic vitamin K3, which is menadione sodium bisulfite. Added sugars or corn syrup, and unspecified natural flavors or animal digest.
What to look for instead? Named meat sources as first ingredients, like chicken, beef, lamb, or salmon. Natural preservatives, like mixed tocopherols or rosemary extract. Whole food carbs, like sweet potato, oats, or brown rice. Named fat sources, like chicken fat or salmon oil. An AAFCO nutritional adequacy statement for your dog's life stage, and transparent ingredient sourcing from reputable manufacturers. Understanding AAFCO dog food standards helps you verify that a food meets minimum nutritional requirements, but avoiding these problematic ingredients takes you beyond minimum and into optimal territory. When you're ready to make the switch, even the best food can cause problems if you switch too abruptly, so plan for a gradual transition over about a week to 10 days. Let's cover some frequently asked questions I hear all the time.
Are grain-free dog foods automatically better than foods with grains? No, grain-free isn't automatically superior, and recent FDA investigations have linked some grain-free formulas heavy in peas, lentils, and potatoes to dilated cardiomyopathy in dogs. Grains like oats, barley, and brown rice provide digestible nutrients and fiber for most dogs. The quality of the protein source and the overall ingredient profile matters far more than whether the food contains grains, unless your dog has a diagnosed grain allergy, which is actually quite rare. Focused on avoiding the low-quality fillers and chemical additives I've listed, rather than eliminating all grains by default. How can I tell if my dog is reacting to a bad ingredient in their food? The most common signs are chronic itching and scratching, ear infections, hot spots, digestive issues like gas or loose stools, low energy, a dull or brittle coat, and excessive shedding outside of normal seasonal patterns. In my grooming shop, I can often tell when a dog's been eating poor quality food just from their coat texture and the amount of dander on my table. If you suspect a food ingredient issue, try an elimination diet with a limited ingredient formula for 8 to 12 weeks. That's how long it takes for dietary changes to fully manifest in skin and coat health. Do expensive dog foods always have better ingredients than budget brands? Not always, though there's often a correlation since quality ingredients cost more to source. I've seen boutique brands with gorgeous marketing that still use vague protein sources and synthetic preservatives, and I've found budget-friendly brands with transparent sourcing and solid ingredients. The price per pound matters less than reading the actual ingredient panel and checking for the red flags in this checklist. Some mid-range brands offer excellent ingredient quality because they skip the fancy packaging and marketing budgets. Always read the label yourself, rather than assuming price equals quality.
Here's what I want you to take away from all this. The ingredient panel on your dog's food bag tells the real story, not the marketing claims on the front or the price tag. I've watched hundreds of dogs transform when their owners started scrutinizing those ingredients and making informed choices. My senior shepherd's mobility and inflammation improved dramatically when we cut out foods with chemical preservatives and mystery meat sources. My terrier's coat went from dull and thin to thick and glossy when we upgraded her protein quality. You don't need a degree in animal nutrition to feed your dog well, you just need to know what to avoid, and now you have that checklist. Start with options that meet these standards, pay attention to your dog's individual response, and remember that what works for one dog might not work for another. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress toward ingredients you can identify and trust. Your groomer will notice the difference, your vet will notice the difference, and most importantly, your dog will feel the difference every single day. That wraps up this episode of the Pet Parent Podcast. Thanks for listening through the whole thing. We'll be back with a new episode on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, same as always. If this episode helped you make sense of dog food labels, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. It genuinely helps other pet parents find the show when they're searching for this kind of information. And if you haven't subscribed or followed yet, do that now so you get notified the second a new episode drops. Talk to you soon.